Hey, my name's Ira Marks, and this is my Draw Diary. So the other day, I bought some new brushes from kylebrush.com, and I needed a good reason to try them out. So I sketched up a little scene, partly inspired by the house I grew up in, which is a house my dad built way out in the country on a hill. And there's a big Christmas tree farm around and a little pond, and two big maples in the front yard. I start out with my line work. I'm using one of the Kyle ink brushes called Old Brush Ink. I like it because I've spent most of my drawing life using a traditional nib dipped in ink, like a calligraphy pen, which has a lot of variety in line weight and a bit of grittiness on the edge because it's a metal tip. So this brush seemed most comfortable for me to start out with. I like the pressure sensitivity that's set with it, so I didn't really mess around with the presets. It's just got a nice rough edge to it. You could see on the car I'm working on here, I've dropped a big heavy line on the top. I like those kind of mistakes with inking. I've also sketched out my design with the non-photo blue, which is a traditional cartooning tool. Illustrators would use it to sketch out their composition, and then you could just go right ahead and ink on top of that. And when you copied it on a Xerox machine or any of those old duplication devices, the blue wouldn't show up. So in a way, it's a little like a green screen. So I keep that color just as comfortable to me. I'm not really changing my brush size a lot. It's all about the pressure sensitivity. So I'm drawing on a screen tablet right now. It's not the fanciest one you can get, but it gets the job done. As I move across the page, I'm just sort of, jumping around randomly, catching all the details of the design. This house is pretty much exactly like the house I grew up in. Big chimney on the left-hand side, a couple windows in the front. All the characters here are just little things from my imagination. Spent a lot of time just drawing alone in my room, so I thought it'd be interesting to fill the landscape with the weird cartoony ideas I had. And now that I've finished my inking, I'm just going to start blocking out my colors. You could call it my base colors. I'm working on this in the winter, so, you're just kind of, in the winter, you're inclined to make cooler images, but I wanted to start warm, just so it doesn't get too cold and bleak. So I've got some reddish-brown trees in the foreground. I'm going to just block out this robot with a dark blue, just to see how much space it's really taking up. And the trees, we'll keep it simple. We'll go with a dark evergreen. I'm not really sure how I want to deal with the ground. Once I color it in green, it feels really busy, but I'll just leave it like that for now. It might be the texture that I'm working with here. I'm using a gouache style brush, which is a bit like watercolor, but works well with a drier application. So I'm getting a lot of texture with this first coat. I'll probably go back in and do more with that later. Got the coloring of my house blocked out. Got a little red car here, like the Toyota Camry, I think, 1992 was the car I had as a kid. Lots of swirly, tentacly snake creatures in my drawings. It's just one of my comfort zones. I like drawing tentacles. I'm looking for a bit of an accent in this image. I keep my colors pretty dull. It might be growing up using a lot of watercolor and a lot of heavy washes. I didn't work with saturation a lot in my images. So I'm trying to ease myself out of that, but you can see just my instinct is to keep it really light and pale. Now that I've got my base colors set up, I'm going to go in and start creating some shadows here. Some of them I'm happy with, some I'm just going to let sit for now. This house, it's getting a little darker, which is pushing it to the foreground a bit. I want to tuck this stuff away, so I'm going to take a blue and just make an atmosphere effect over this robot. Try to hide him in the clouds a little bit. In fact, I will go so far as to drop a cloud on top of him. Let's get this blue set and build a little cloud right here. So the coloring looks good. I'm going to come in and cut out the background of the inking layer and shift it around, and I just dropped it down to about 90% opacity. So it's not as heavy a line anymore. That works for the robot. Now I'm up here at the trees. I'm going to use a watercolor brush. I think it's called like a splatter spread. So it would be like the equivalent of a big fat round brush. Just lay down some non-directional color. I'm going to come around and just clean up the edges. I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but I'm going to do it the lazy way. There, so that pushes those trees to the foreground. Now I'm going to come in here and strip out some of that shadow I put on the house earlier. There we go. That sets it more in the background. For me, anyway. I've got a lot of texture going, and it just seems a bit much at this point. I'm going to stop thinking about it just for a little bit and hop over to the snake. Build out some roundness in it by creating some value. Just got a darker color layer set up over here. Color dodge is a good layer effect if you're creating a highlight. So you can see like I'm doing here on the snake. I do my highlights and shadows on separate layers so I can tweak them as I need. The snake doesn't really feel round enough yet, so I'm going to come back in with that old brush ink and create some stripes. Yeah, that helps. I try not to zoom in too much when I'm drawing. I like to keep it as traditional as possible. Like, you can't really zoom in when you're drawing on paper, and I feel for me, I lose track of my line weight if I get too close up to my image. So it's not really for your benefit that I'm staying zoomed out here so you can see the whole image. It's really for me. I like to get a sense of what's going on and how all the lines I make relate to the space around them. All right, this little octopus needs to be more fun. Give him a little and a leopard print. Nice warm orange. This is the little pond that was next to my house. There was no octopus in it growing up, but it always seemed like something lived in there. I couldn't prove it though. Okay, next I'm going to go back in and deal with these trees a little bit. Add a little more shadow to them. Deal with these caps, maybe like just a white grayish color, little snow caps on the guys. And they're kind of boring too. So the same way I put rings around the serpent, I'm going to give these guys little stripes. Implies a bit of depth. There we go. It's like they have little tattoos on them. Okay, I've got most of my colors set up here, so I'm just going to kind of come in and do some really basic touch-ups along the way here. Time to deal with this grass situation. I think it's too much to show all that green. It's not really necessary. It's not really adding anything to the composition. So I'm just going to try a couple things. So I'm going to use this edge where the water line ends and just sort of fade it out a bit. So they're running down a green slope, but then it just turns to white in the foreground. Let's try the opposite approach. Put a little white cap up here. Separate out that raccoon tail. I guess that'll do for now. Define this pond area a little more by putting some grasses around there. Put some shadow on this octopus. Which again, it's just another darkened layer with a deeper red on top. Switch that to color dodge. Some shadows under the serpent. So I'm feeling pretty good about this foreground element. All these shadows are bringing things out a little. Here's another Kyle brush, like a watercolor. Works well for these shadows here. Let's darken this lower background here a bit. All right, something I missed earlier, the raccoon stripes. Let's settle in these here. Some hatching marks. Back to the old brush ink. Add a couple more details to the house, some of the lines for the wooden shingles. I'm going to deal with this car in the foreground here in a minute. Once I finish everything up, it might help me make some choices about what to do. Pink now. Maybe I'm going to try a yellow, see how that looks. Kind of getting close to the end here, so I'm just going to play with a couple of things. Put some texture on this car. Age it down a little. That'll do. And a couple highlights on the raccoon. And there we go. We have a finished image. So thanks for hanging out with me on my Draw Diary. More videos coming soon, so keep an eye out. Stick around. Thanks for watching.